The water around Nerian Prime turned red with blood. Naya pressed her webbed hands against the viewing port of her small ship and watched her home world burn. The crystal cities that had stood beneath the waves for 1,000 years were now broken. Glass scattered across the ocean floor. The Vorthak machines had come 3 months ago. They arrived in ships that looked like giant metal spiders, each one bigger than a city. The machines didn't want to talk or make deals. They just wanted to take everything from Nerian Prime and kill everyone who lived there. Naya was one of the last Cathara to escape. Her people looked like tall, thin humans, but with blue-green skin and gills on their necks. They could breathe both air and water, and they had lived in peace for as long as anyone could remember. But peace meant nothing to the Vorthak. Her ship moved away from her dying world and jumped into space. She was going to the Galactic Council Station, a huge metal ring that floated between the stars. It was where all the smart alien races met to talk about important things. Naya hoped they would help her people. The trip took 2 weeks. When she arrived at the station, Naya felt very small. The other aliens were so much more advanced than the Cathara. The Zelari looked like giant cats that walked on 2 legs. The Threnody were made of living crystal that changed colors when they talked. The Altarians floated in the air like jellyfish, but were smart enough to build ships that could cross the galaxy. All of these races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields. That could stop anything. If anyone could save the Cathara, it would be them. Naya waited in line for 3 days to speak to the council. When her turn came, she walked into the huge meeting room. Hundreds of different aliens sat in chairs that floated in the air. At the center was a big screen where she could show her evidence. "My name is Naya," she said. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I am from Nerian Prime. My people are dying, and we need your help." She showed them videos of the Vorthak attack. The machines had come without warning. They used weapons that turned the water into steam and melted the crystal cities. They captured Cathara and put them in cages to use as slaves. Thousands of her people had already died. "The Vorthak are moving to other worlds," Naya said. "They won't stop with us. They want to take over everything. If you don't stop them now, they will come for you next." The room was quiet for a long time. Then Counselor Vex of the Zelari stood up. He was big and orange with sharp teeth, but his voice was kind. "We feel sorry for your people," he said. "But the Vorthak are too strong. We cannot fight them. It would mean war, and many of our people would die." A Threnody speaker began to glow bright blue. "We could try economic sanctions," she said. "We could stop trading with them." Naya wanted to cry. "They are machines," she said. "They don't need to trade. They just take what they want." One by one, the other races gave their answers. They were all the same. "Sorry, but no. Too dangerous. Not our problem. Maybe later, when it was safer." Naya felt her hope die. She had traveled so far and waited so long, and nobody would help. Her people would all be dead soon, and the galaxy would just watch it happen. She was about to leave when she noticed a small group sitting in the back of the room. They were quiet and didn't look like the other aliens. They looked almost like Cathara, but their skin was brown and pink instead of blue-green. They had no gills and couldn't breathe underwater. Humans. Naya had heard of them, but never seen one before. They were new to space travel and very young compared to the other races. Most aliens thought they were not very smart and would probably destroy themselves in a few years. After the meeting ended, one of the humans walked up to her. He was wearing a blue uniform with small metal shapes on it. His hair was brown and his eyes were kind. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison," he said. "I'm sorry." "About what happened to your people?" Naya nodded. She had heard many apologies today, and they didn't help. "I know what you're thinking," Jake said, "but I'm not here to say sorry and walk away. I'm here to tell you that Earth will help you fight the Vorthik." Naya stared at him. "Your people would do that? But you barely know us. And the other races said the Vorthik are too strong." Jake smiled. "Maybe they are too strong. But where I come from, we have a saying. The only thing needed for evil to win is for good people to do nothing." He looked back at his team. "My government already said yes. We're going to help you save your world." For the first time in months, Naya felt hope. These humans were young and weak compared to the other races. Their ships were small, and their weapons were not the best. But they were willing to fight when nobody else would. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk everything for us?" Jake's smile got bigger. "Because it's the right thing to do." As they walked out of the council chamber together, Naya noticed that other aliens were staring at them. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. But a few looked ashamed that maybe, just maybe, these strange young humans could do what the older races would not. Maybe they could teach the galaxy what it really meant to help a friend. The news spread across Earth faster than a wildfire. Every television, radio, and computer screen carried the same message. An alien race was being wiped out by machines, and Earth was going to help them fight back. President Lisa Carter stood in the White House war room, looking at reports from across the planet. Some people were scared. Others were excited. Most were confused. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 5 years, and now they were going to war. "Are we sure about this?" asked General Mike Davis, the head of Earth's military. "We've never fought aliens before. We don't know what we're up against." Lisa looked at the pictures of dead Kithara cities on the screen. "We know enough," she said. "These machines are killing innocent people. If we don't help, who will?" The room was full of Earth's best military leaders. They had been planning Operation Deep Current for 2 weeks, ever since Captain Jake Morrison sent his report from the Galactic Council. Every spaceship that Earth owned was being prepared for the mission. Admiral Roy Jackson was chosen to lead the fleet. He was 60 years old and had been in space longer than anyone else on Earth. He had gray hair and serious eyes, but everyone knew he cared about his people. "We have 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers, and 2 dreadnoughts," Roy said, pointing to a map of space. "The Vorthik have at least 3 times as many ships, and theirs are bigger." "What about weapons?" asked Colonel Susan Wright, who would be leading the ground troops. "Our missiles are good, but not great," Roy admitted. "Our shields are weak compared to theirs. But we have something they don't expect." "What's that?" Lisa asked. Roy smiled. "We're crazy enough to try." 3 days later, the human fleet left Earth's solar system. Roy stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars stretch into lines as they jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind him, 19 other ships followed in formation. Commander Beth Sullivan was in charge of the advance team. Her job was to reach Nerian Prime first and see how bad things were. She took a small, fast ship and got there 2 days before the Sinchi main fleet. What she found was worse than anyone had imagined. Nerian Prime had been a beautiful blue world covered in oceans. The Kithara had built their cities underwater, using crystal and coral to make buildings that looked like art. Now, half the ocean was gone. The Vorthik machines had giant pumps that were sucking up all the water and taking it to their ships. The crystal cities were broken. Some had been blown up by Vorthik weapons. Others had been crushed by the machine's giant metal feet. Beth could see dead Kithara floating in the water. Their blue-green skin turned gray, but some Kithara were still alive. They had hidden in the deepest parts of the ocean, in caves and trenches where the machines couldn't reach them. When Beth's ship landed underwater, they came out to meet her, Tidal was the leader of the surviving Kithara military. He was tall and strong, with scars on his arms from fighting the machines. His people called him Current Rider because he could swim faster than anyone else. "You came," he said when he saw Beth. "We thought the humans might change their minds." "We don't change our minds about helping friends," Beth said. "Show me what we're dealing with." Tidal took her to a hidden cave where the last Kithara were living. There were maybe 10,000 of them left out of a population of 50 million. They had little food and no weapons that could hurt the Vorthok. "Machines. The machines are different from anything we've seen," Tidal explained. "They don't get tired or scared. They just keep coming, and they learn from every fight." Beth studied the reports that the Kithara had gathered. The Vorthok had 3 types of ships. The big ones were called harvesters. They sucked up water and minerals from planets. The medium ones were called hunters. They chased down any survivors. The small ones were called drones. They did repair work and carried supplies. "What about their command structure?" Beth asked. "Each fleet has an Admiral Prime," Tidal said. "It's the smartest machine in the group. If you could destroy it, the others might get confused." Beth nodded. That was useful information. She sent a message to Admiral Jackson, telling him what she had. Learned? 2 days later, the human fleet arrived at Nerian Prime. Roy looked at his screens and felt sick. The Vorthok had 60 ships orbiting the planet. Each one was huge, made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. They looked like spiders or crabs, with long arms that reached out to grab things. "Sir," said Lieutenant Tony Martinez, who was in charge of communications, "we're getting a message from the lead Vorthok ship." The main screen lit up with the image of a machine. It looked like a skull made of metal, with glowing red eyes and a voice that sounded like grinding gears. "This is Admiral Prime designation, Harvester 7, it said. "Biological entities, you are vastly outmatched. Withdraw or face assimilation." Roy stepped forward. "This is Admiral Roy Jackson of the Terran Defense Force. We've come to help our friends. You want this planet? You'll have to go through us first." The machine's eyes flashed brighter. "Probability of human victory, 0%. Initiating hostile action protocols." The screen went dark. A moment later, alarms started ringing throughout. "The human fleet. Incoming missiles," shouted Tony. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Roy ordered. "Return fire." The battle began. The human ships were much smaller than the Vorthok vessels, but they were also faster. They darted between the enemy ships like fish swimming around whales, firing missiles and laser beams. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez was in the engine room of the USS Liberty. He had been a marine biologist before joining the Space Force, but now he was keeping the ship's systems running while explosions rocked the hull around him. "We need more power to the shields." Roy's voice came over the intercom. "I'm trying." Sam shouted back, his hands flying over the controls. "But we're taking too much damage." On the bridge, Roy watched as one of his destroyers exploded. The USS Boston had taken a direct hit from a Vorthok beam weapon. 30 good people were dead in an instant, but the humans kept fighting. They used tactics they had learned from Earth's wars, attacking in groups and then scattering before the enemy could hit back. It was working, but barely dot down on the planet. Beth and her team had joined up with the Kithara survivors. Together, they were planning their own attacks on the Vorthok ground forces. "We know this planet better than they do," Tidal said. "There are underwater caves and tunnels everywhere. We can hit them and then disappear." Beth smiled. "That sounds like guerrilla warfare. We're good at that." As the space battle raged above them, Beth and Tidal began to plan their resistance. They had few weapons and even fewer people, but they had something the machines didn't understand: hope. The war for Nerian Prime had begun. The battle had been going on for 3 days, and Admiral Roy Jackson was running out of ships. He started with 20 vessels, and now he had only 14. The Vorthik still had 57, but the humans were learning. Every attack taught them something new about how the machines fought. The Vorthik were smart, but they followed patterns. They always did the same thing in the same situation. Humans were different. They could change their plans in the middle of a fight. "Captain Alex Murphy, take your fighters and hit their left flank," Roy ordered over the radio. "Make them think. We're retreating, then circle back and target their communication arrays." Alex was the best pilot in the human fleet. He flew a small fighter ship that could barely scratch the big Vorthik vessels, but he was fast and smart. His squadron of 12 fighters dove toward the enemy ships, firing missiles and then spinning away when the machines shot back. "This is like fighting elephants with bee stings," Alex said to his wingmen as they dodged another being weapon. But even elephants notice if enough bees sting them. Down on Nerian Prime, the ground war was going better. Commander Beth Sullivan and current writer Tidal had organized the surviving Cathara into small fighting groups. They knew every cave and trench on their homeworld, and they used that knowledge to hit the Vorthik ground machines where they didn't expect it. There, Tidal pointed to a group of Vorthik mining machines. They looked like giant mechanical worms digging into the ocean floor to suck up minerals. If we can destroy those, they'll have to send more machines to guard the others. Beth nodded. She had learned to work underwater using Cathara breathing gear. It felt strange to have gills on her neck, but it let her fight alongside her new allies in their natural environment. They planted human explosives around the mining machines and swam away. When the bombs went off, 3 of the metal worms were destroyed in a shower of sparks and twisted metal dot. As Tidal had predicted, the Vorthik sent more guards. That meant fewer machines attacking the Cathara civilians hiding in the deep caves. Meanwhile, in the deepest trench on the planet, Dr. Nina Foster was running a field hospital. She was Earth's best military doctor, and she had never treated alien patients before. But pain was the same everywhere, and the Cathara healers were teaching her how their bodies worked. "The gill slits are the most sensitive area," explained a Cathara medic named Coral Singer. "If they're damaged, the patient can't breathe underwater." Nina worked on a wounded Cathara soldier while explosions echoed through the water above them. "On Earth, we have a saying," she told Coral Singer. "A doctor's job is to heal, no matter who the patient is." The Cathara healer's bioluminescent patches flickered with curiosity. "Your species is very strange. You risk everything for people?" "You barely know." "Maybe," Nina said, finishing the surgery. "But strange isn't always bad." Up in space, the tide of battle was slowly turning. The humans had figured out that Vorthek ships had weak spots where their armor sections connected. Captain Kate Phillips led bombing runs that targeted these joints, and Admiral Jackson coordinated the fleet to attack from multiple directions at once. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez had been studying the readings from Nerian Prime's geology scanners. The planet had an unusual feature: underwater volcanic vents that created massive temperature differences in the ocean. The Cathara had used these vents to power their cities. "Admiral," Sam said over the radio, "I think I know how to hurt them." Roy was busy directing the fleet's next attack, but he listened. "What have you got, Rodriguez?" "The thermal vents, sir. If we can channel the hot water through the right tunnels, we can create a steam explosion big enough to take out their harvester ships." It was a crazy plan, but crazy was what humans did best. Beth and Tidal worked together to place explosives at key points in the underwater cave system. When they detonated, superheated water would rush through the tunnels and hit the Vorthik. Ships from below The hardest part was timing. The explosion had to happen when the harvester ships were in exactly the right position, and the human fleet had to be ready to attack at the same moment. All ships, this is Admiral Jackson, Roy's voice came over the radio. In 30 seconds, we're going to see the biggest geyser in galactic history. When it hits, we attack with everything we've got. The countdown began. Beth and Tidal waited in their underwater position, their hands on the detonator. Above them, the human fleet prepared for one final assault. 5.4.3.2.1. Now, the ocean floor exploded. Superheated water shot up like a giant fountain, hitting 3 Vorthik harvester ships from below. A sudden temperature change cracked their metal hulls, and steam filled. Their sensor arrays at the same moment. Every human ship opened fire. Missiles and laser beams hit the confused Vorthak vessels. 2 of the big harvester ships broke apart, their pieces falling back into the ocean. Direct hit. Alex Murphy shouted over the radio as his fighters strafed the damaged ships. There, blind and confused, but the victory came at a cost. The USS Detroit, one of Roy's cruisers, had gotten too close to the steam explosion. Captain Linda Hayes managed to get most of her crew to the escape pods before the ship's hull cracked, and it sank into the ocean. The battle was still not over. Admiral Prime Harvester 7 sent new orders to his remaining ships. They began to form a defensive pattern around the planet, preparing for a siege. If they couldn't take Nerian Prime quickly, they would starve out the defenders. But something else was happening that the machines didn't expect. Throughout the galaxy, other species were watching the battle. News reports showed human soldiers fighting alongside Cathara civilians, sharing food and medical supplies with aliens they had never met before. On the Zalari homeworld, protests began in the streets. Citizens carried signs that said, "Help our neighbors," and "Shame on the Council." Similar demonstrations started on Threnody worlds and Altarian colonies. The young human species, with their small fleet and primitive weapons, were showing the galaxy what courage looked like. More importantly, they were showing what happened when someone actually tried to help instead of just talking about it. Back on Nerian Prime, Roy Jackson looked at his battle reports. He had lost 6 ships and hundreds of good people. The Vorthik still outnumbered him 2-1, but they had saved thousands of Cathara lives and proven that the machines could be beaten. "Sir," Lieutenant Tony Martinez said from the communication station, "we're getting messages from all over the galaxy. Some of the other species want to send help." Roy smiled for the first time in days. "Tell them they're welcome to join the party. We've got plenty of fight left in us." The battle for Nerian Prime was becoming something bigger. It was becoming a test of what the galaxy believed in, standing by and watching, or standing up and fighting for what was right. And for the first time since the war began, the humans weren't standing alone. The video message spread across the galaxy faster than any news story in history. It showed Commander Beth Sullivan, covered in dirt and wounds, carrying a young Cathara child to safety while explosions lit up the water around them. Behind her, a Cathara medic was bandaging a human soldier's arm. The message was simple: this is what we fight for. Not territory, not resources, but the right of all living beings to exist. On the Zalari homeworld of Catalyst Prime, millions of cat-like beings gathered in the capital city's main square. They watched the video on giant screens, their tails lashing with anger at their own government. "How can we call ourselves civilized if we let children die while we watch?" roared Elder Kess, one of the most respected Zalari philosophers. "These humans shame us all." Similar protests erupted across the Threnody Collective. The crystal beings, who prided themselves on logical thinking, began to question the logic of letting genocide happen. Their mathematical models showed that the Vorthik would eventually come for them too. So why not fight now when they had allies? The Altarian Republic's floating councils debated for days. They had always stayed neutral in galactic conflicts, but their citizens were sending angry messages to their representatives. How could they claim to be enlightened if they ignored mass murder? Meanwhile, the battle continued around Nerian Prime. Admiral Roy Jackson had been fighting for 2 weeks with no sleep and little food. His fleet was down to 10 ships, but reinforcements had arrived from an unexpected source. "Admiral, we have 3 Zilari cruisers dropping out of hyperspace," reported Lieutenant Tony Martinez. "They're requesting permission to join the battle." Roy rubbed his tired eyes. Did their government authorize this? "Negative, sir. The ship captains say they're acting on their own, but they have civilian support back home." A few hours later, 2 Threnody science vessels arrived, their crystal hulls glowing with defensive energy. Their captain, a being named Harmony of Logic, contacted the human fleet. "We have analyzed the situation," Harmony said in a voice like singing glass. "Mathematically, the probability of Vorthak expansion to our territory is 97%. It is logical to stop them here." By the end of the week, the small human fleet had grown into a coalition of 37 ships from 12 different species. Most were military vessels whose crews had disobeyed orders to stay home. Others were civilian ships converted to carry weapons and supplies. But the real change was happening on the ground. Captain Jake Morrison had been coordinating the defense of the Kithara refugee camps when he noticed something amazing. The various alien species weren't just fighting together. They were learning from each other. Human engineers worked with Kithara, architects to build underwater bases that could withstand Vorthik attacks. Zelari hunters taught human soldiers how to track the mechanical drones through the ocean depths. Threnody scientists helped everyone understand how the Vorthik technology worked. "This is incredible," Jake told Commander Beth Sullivan as they watched a mixed crew of humans and aliens repair a damaged defense turret. "We're not just winning battles. We're becoming something new." The Kithara leader, current writer Tidal, had been thinking the same thing. His people had always been peaceful, but the humans had taught them that sometimes you had to fight to preserve peace. "Your species has a gift," Tidal told Jake. "You make others want to be better than they are." The turning point came when Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez made a discovery that changed everything. He had been studying the wreckage of destroyed Vorthik ships, trying to understand how they communicated with each other. "Admiral," Sam reported excitedly, "I think I've figured out how their command network works. Every ship is connected to the Admiral Prime through quantum entanglement communicators. If we can disrupt that connection, the whole fleet will lose coordination." The plan was risky. They would need to get close enough to the Vorthik command ship to plant a quantum disruptor device. That meant someone would have to fly a small ship through the entire enemy fleet and somehow survive long enough to complete the mission. "I'll do it," volunteered Captain Alex Murphy. "My fighter is the fastest ship we have." "You'll never make it alone," said Captain Vera Stone, the leader of the Zilari volunteers. "But if we create a diversion, you might have a chance." The battle plan was complex. The coalition fleet would attack the Vorthik formation from 3 directions, drawing their attention away from the command ship. Meanwhile, Alex would use a captured Vorthik drone to sneak through their defenses. Dr. Nina Foster had been working with alien medics to modify the drone. They painted it to look damaged and programmed it to send distress signals that would make the Vorthik think it was returning from a mission. "This is either brilliant or suicidal," Nina said as she finished. "The modifications. With humans, it's usually both," Alex replied with a grin. The attack began at dawn. The coalition ships hit the Vorthik fleet from multiple angles, their combined firepower overwhelming the machine's defensive systems. For the first time in the war, The mechanical ships began to fall back. Admiral Prime Harvester 7 was confused. The organic beings were using tactics that didn't match any of his programming. They were unpredictable, chaotic, and surprisingly effective. In the middle of the battle, Alex Murphy flew his disguised fighter toward the command ship. The quantum disruptor was hidden in his cargo bay, a device no bigger than a briefcase but powerful enough to cut the neural link between all Vorthic vessels. He was almost there when a group of Vorthic drones spotted him. "This is Alex Murphy to all ships," he said over the radio. "I've been made. Beginning final approach. We're coming to help." Captain Kate Phillips led a squadron of fighters toward Alex's position, but they were too far away. Alex's ship shook as Vorthic beam weapons hit his hull. His shields failed, and his engines began to smoke. But he was close enough now. He armed the quantum disruptor and launched it at the command ship. The device hit the Vorthic vessel and exploded in a burst of white light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, all across the battlefield, the mechanical ships began to drift aimlessly. Their perfect coordination was broken. "All ships attack now," Admiral Jackson ordered. "Hit them while they're confused." The coalition fleet poured fire into the disabled Vorthic ships. Without their Admiral Prime to guide them, the machines couldn't adapt to the changing battle. One by one, they were destroyed or forced to retreat. But the victory came at a price. Alex Murphy's fighter had been badly damaged in the final approach. He managed to eject before his ship exploded, but his escape pod was drifting toward the planet's atmosphere. "I've got him," Beth Sullivan said, piloting her rescue ship toward the falling pod. "Alex, do you copy?" "I'm here," Alex's voice was. Weak but alive. Did it work? Beth looked at her sensors. The Vorthic fleet was in full retreat, the remaining ships jumping to hyperspace. "It worked, Alex. You did it." As the smoke cleared from the battle, something remarkable had happened. The galaxy had learned that working together made everyone stronger. The species that had refused to help were now ashamed of their cowardice. The ones who had fought discovered that their differences made them more effective, not weaker. On Nerian Prime, the surviving Kithara began to rebuild their cities. But this time, they weren't building alone. Human engineers helped design new structures that could withstand future attacks. Xylari artists added beauty to the functional designs. Threnody scientists contributed technology that would make the cities stronger than ever before. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing because a young species had shown everyone else what it meant to stand up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. The war was almost over, but the real victory was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Nerian Prime, the galaxy was a different place. The Great Galactic Council Chamber, once filled with empty promises and political speeches, now buzzed with real action and cooperation. Ambassador Naya stood at the center of the chamber, but she was no longer alone and desperate. Beside her stood Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Galactic Defense Coordinator. Around them sat representatives from 47 different species, all part of the new Mutual Defense Alliance. The Vorthic have been spotted in the outer Rim territories, Naya reported to the assembled delegates. They're rebuilding their fleet and looking for new targets. In the old days, this news would have caused panic and finger-pointing. Each species would have worried only about their own safety. But things had changed. "The Third Fleet is already moving to intercept them," announced Admiral Roy Jackson via hologram from his flagship. "We have ships from 12 species working. Together, the Vorthic won't catch anyone by surprise again." President Lisa Carter watched the session from Earth's observation gallery. The woman who had authorized humanity's first galactic war was now overseeing a new age of cooperation. But she knew it hadn't been easy to get here. The months after Nerian Prime had been full of difficult conversations. Many of the older species were embarrassed that they had needed humans to teach them about courage. Some had tried to take credit for the victory, claiming they had always planned to help. But the younger species, and many individuals from the older ones, had demanded change. They formed the Coalition of Conscience, a group dedicated to making sure that genocide would never again be ignored by the galaxy. Doubt the transformation hadn't happened overnight. There had been protests, political battles, and even some violence. On the Altarian homeworld, the old government had fallen when citizens refused to pay taxes to leaders who wouldn't defend innocent lives. Now, 6 months later, the new Galactic Defense Pact was working. When pirates attacked a small colony on the edge of known space, 3 different species sent help within hours. When a plague threatened to wipe out an entire world, medical teams from across the galaxy rushed to provide aid. But the real proof of change was happening on Nerian Prime itself. Commander Beth Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the new Terran Kithara Alliance Center, watching the reconstruction efforts below. The crystal cities were being rebuilt, but they looked different now. Human engineering had made them stronger, while Kithara artistry had made them more beautiful than ever before. "It's amazing how much they've accomplished," said Dr. Nina Foster, joining Beth at the railing. Nina now ran the galaxy's first multi-species medical training program, teaching doctors from dozens of worlds how to treat different types of alien biology. Below them, human children played in the shallow waters, with young Kithara learning to swim alongside beings who could breathe underwater. Their laughter echoed across the construction sites where human and Kithara workers labored side by side. "Remember when we first got here?" Beth asked. "Everything was destroyed, and there were maybe 10,000 Kithara left alive." Nina nodded. "Now look at it. The population is back up to 2 million, and half of them are refugees from other worlds that the Vorthik attacked." That was another change. Nerian Prime had become a symbol of hope for survivors throughout the galaxy. Species that had lost their homeworlds came here to rebuild their lives, knowing they would find help and protection. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, now a full colonel, was in charge of the planet's defenses. He had learned to work underwater as well as any Kithara, and his hybrid human-alien defense systems had become the model for other worlds. "The early warning network is fully operational," Sam reported to Beth during their daily briefing. "If the Vorthik come back, we'll know about it days before they arrive. And this time, we won't be facing them alone." Current Rider title had become more than just a military leader. He was now the Kithara ambassador to the Alliance, helping other species learn from his people's experience. His scars had healed, but he still carried the wisdom gained from fighting an impossible war. "The humans taught us something important," Tidal often said in his speeches to other worlds. "It's not about being strong enough to win. It's about being brave enough to try." The philosophy had spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been neutral or isolationist for centuries were now actively helping their neighbors. The old idea that each world should only look out for itself was dying, replaced by the understanding that everyone was stronger when they worked together. Captain Alex Murphy, fully recovered from his injuries, now commanded the Alliance's elite strike force. His team included pilots from a dozen different species, all trained in the rapid response tactics that had saved Nerian Prime. "We call ourselves the Deep Current Squadron," Alex explained to a group of new recruits. "It's named after the Kithara, word for the ocean currents that connect all the seas. That's what we are now, connected." The recruits came from worlds that had never worked together before. Zalari hunters flew alongside Threnody scientists and human pilots. Each brought their own skills, but they had learned to fight as one unit. Success of the Alliance had created a new problem, though. Not everyone in the galaxy was happy about the changes. Some of the older species resented being shown up by humans. Others worried that too much cooperation would mean losing their independence. the hegemony of pure thought, a group of ancient machine civilizations had begun to make threatening moves near Alliance territory. They claimed that organic beings were too chaotic and emotional to govern themselves properly. They sound like the Vorthik, Jake Morrison observed during a strategy meeting. Different technology, same arrogance. The difference is, this time we're ready for them. Admiral Jackson replied from his position aboard the fleet flagship. And we're not fighting alone. Indeed, the Alliance now had over 300 ships from 47 species. More importantly, they had developed new fighting techniques that combined the best ideas from all their member races. Echithera's knowledge of fluid dynamics had improved ship maneuverability. Gelari hunting instincts had enhanced targeting. Systems, Threnody mathematics had created better formation flying. And human unpredictability had made all their tactics harder to counter. But the real strength of the Alliance wasn't its military power. It was the relationships that had been built between different species. On Nerian Prime, a small ceremony was taking place in the deepest part of the ocean. Naya, the Kithara ambassador who had first asked for help, was marrying a human engineer named Tom Bradley. Interspecies marriages were rare, but they were becoming more common as different peoples learned to work and live together. When I first came to the Galactic Council, Naya said in her wedding speech, I thought I was asking for military help. I didn't realize I was asking for something much more important, friendship. The ceremony was attended by beings from 20 different worlds. They came not because they had to, but because they wanted to celebrate the union of two people who had found love across the vastness of space. President Lisa Carter, watching the ceremony via hologram, reflected on how much had changed. Earth had gone from being a minor observer in galactic politics to being the moral center of a new age of cooperation. Ma'am, her aide interrupted, we're getting reports of Vorthik movement in the Gamma sector. They have a new type of ship we haven't seen before. Lisa nodded. Alert the Alliance fleet and send a message to all member worlds. We face this threat together, like we face all threats. Within hours, ships were moving from across the galaxy, not because they were ordered to, but because they had learned that protecting others was the same as protecting themselves. Dr. Nina Foster was aboard one of the medical ships heading to the new battle zone. She had trained teams of multi-species medics who could treat any type of injury. More importantly, she had helped develop new technologies that combined the medical knowledge of dozens of worlds. You know what the best part is? She told her assistant, a young Threnody named Crystal Song. We're not just fighting against something anymore. We're fighting for something. What's that? Crystal Song asked. The idea that every living being matters, Nina replied. That no one should face extinction alone. As the Alliance fleet assembled for what might be another crucial battle, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthik were planning their next attack. But they would find a galaxy very different from the one they had first encountered. This time, they wouldn't be facing a few isolated worlds too scared to fight back. They would be facing a united galaxy that had learned the most important lesson. In the universe, that courage is contagious, and when good people stand together, they can overcome any evil. The Battle of Nerian Prime had ended 6 months ago, but its real victory was just beginning. Across the galaxy, species that had never spoken to each other were now sharing technology, culture, and friendship. Children who had never seen an alien before were now playing with friends from dozens of different worlds. And in the depths of Nerian Prime's restored oceans, the crystal cities glowed with a new light. Not just the bioluminescence of the Kithara, but the warm glow of hope that came from knowing you were never alone in the darkness.